So the first leg we're going to be talking about is the downwind leg. This is going to be parallel to and in the opposite direction of the runway of intended landing. As for downwind tracking, to get the proper track, you have to put the wingtip of the wing on the runway. On downwind, you also need to be straight and level, which means 135 knots and 1900 feet. The way you achieve that is you need to have the cruise attitude set, and you need to have approximately 18 inches of manifold pressure, which will vary with the temperature. And of course, you should have 2400 RPM set. So it's fuel pump on, fuel selector to the fullest tank, mixture prop is set, 135, flaps takeoff, 135, gear down, control the balloon, wait for the gear to transit, 3 green, brakes test, harness secure. Pre-landing checks complete. After the pre-landing checks, you want to be stabilized at 1900 feet still, and you want the airspeed to bleed down to 105. Now, because of the drag of the flap and the gear, the airspeed will naturally bleed, so little to no power adjustment is required. And as you're approaching the end of downwind, you're going to do a tail-to-tail lookout in preparation for the turn to base. You want to start your base turn when the threshold is 45 degrees behind you. The turn to base is simply a medium descending turn. In the turn, you're looking for a 30 degrees angle of bank. Now, once you're established in the turn, you're going to bring back a couple inches of manifold pressure, and you're going to have to adjust the attitude to maintain 105 and get yourself established on a descent profile for the rest of the approach. And now we're established on the base leg, and the base leg is simply a descent to intercept the extended center line. On base, we want to cross-check our airspeed and make sure we're maintaining 105 knots, and we want to manage our descent profile. You want to manage your descent profile so you're at 1500 feet just before the turn to final. Coming up to the end of base leg, you want to do a tail-to-tail lookout in preparation for the turn to final. The turn to final is simply a medium descending turn to intercept the extended center line. During the turn, you want to maintain 20 to 30 degrees angle of bank and cross-check your airspeed to make sure you're still holding 105. On final, there's 3 things to manage. There's the glide path, center line, and airspeed. The first part of glide path is the aim point. The aim point is just above the threshold markers. You want to be on a collision course to that point. You do that by maintaining the aim point stationary in your windscreen. The second half of glide path is runway perspective. You want to maintain a steady angle towards your aim point. You do this by maintaining a steady runway perspective. The next item is centerline management. You want to put the centerline on top of you as the pilot. You use the rudder and aileron to manage this. You use rudder to stay straight and aileron to stay on top of the centerline. And finally, we have airspeed management. You're going to maintain 105 knots until 3/4 of a mile before the threshold, at which point you're going to do your final checks and put the flaps down to land. Due to the drag of the flaps, the airplane will naturally slow down to the target approach speed of 85 knots. Little to no power adjustment is required here. As you start to get close to the threshold, you're going to start cross-checking the end of the runway. As the aim point disappears underneath the engine cowling and you start experiencing the ground rush, you're going to round out and enter the hold-off. In the hold-off, you're just flying level above the runway, at which point you're going to smoothly bring the power to idle and manage the center line just like you did before on final with rudder and aileron. As you're concentrating your eyes at the end of the runway, you're going to maintain the runway stationary in your peripheral vision by slowly raising the nose up to the landing attitude. Once at the landing attitude, you're going to hold the attitude and let the airplane settle onto the runway main wheels first, and then slowly ease the nose wheel down.